Alright, you guys ready? Alright, let's do it.
Okay, it's recording.
Look, we gotta wake up from a system of materialism. This guy's thinking if we're gonna see another day. Cause day to day we see another life, which is baby. Everybody's living in the world that they
Alright, hey kings and queens, this is Project X. I'm Dara and this is...
I'm Audny.
Welcome to our panel today. Let's introduce our panel.
So I'm Marcus Shirley.
I'm Qetsiyah.
I'm Lauren.
So today we're going to be discussing the topic of reparations. We know that there's been a lot of buzz about it in the media, especially as of recent. But there's been a lot of American buzz about it, and on this show we like to discuss it from our perspectives. And you know, we live in Canada, and a lot of us are first generation Canadian, or even not first generation Canadian. A lot of us come from either Caribbean or African background. So right now we're going to be discussing this from our perspective. So my question to you guys is, what do you think that reparations would look like for us? Or yeah,
When we talk about reparations, like what kind of reparations are we talking about?
what do you think that some people think reparations would be money, some people think that would be land, some people think that just, what does it look like for you?
Well, any way or form, within our society, we live in a capitalistic society. It's how most of the Western world is. In order for us to receive reparations, it has to be of some sort of value with money. It has to be some sort of money. If it's land, it involves money. If it's investments, if it's taxes, if it's jobs, it all is going to involve money. So
It will involve money, but some people are saying give people from African descent, give each person $100,000. Some people are saying give us how many acres of land. So what do you think would be more beneficial to the community?
well, in terms of land, like they're not just gonna give us an acre of land and spread us out on our entire the entire land of Canada and spread us out different pieces of land for us to have. I think that's not gonna happen. Certain people own land. There isn't a lot of open land in Canada to just be handing out to every single person. Nevertheless, it seems kind of preposterous for us to all be separated between an acre and just living among Canada or even in the States, because that's what we needed for reparations. And then when it comes to actually giving back how much money we would have had if we weren't brought into colonization and forced to migrate into the Western world, and weren't put into slavery, that'd be so much money. He said $100,000 per person. The government would never do that. Under no circumstance.
Qetsiyah?
I think that giving money is not going to be a good answer, because I feel like we live in a world that has been built to benefit white people.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So the system is made in such a way that will only benefit white people. So even if they give us money, it's not like we're really going to benefit from it if they don't change the system. So I feel like they need to change the system before they even go into reparations and stuff.
So
Yeah.
How do we change the system?
For reparations, who is going to be responsible for that? Because if you're talking about colonization and the original colonial powers, how are you going to know who specifically took those people from whatever place and then displaced them? You would have to trace back the Portuguese and the start of slavery, and how do we explain which people came from where and then what is owed to them? Because even if you think about it, Jamaica, there's a lot of people who are taken from Ghanaian descent. So if you're looking for all the islands, the entirety of Africa, everyone who is African American, and when you start talking about Canadian, African Canadian, then you get into something even more difficult, because a lot of those people were runaway slaves, and you have places in Nova Scotia where those people went and settled, where you have Africville, and the differences in where these people of different descents came from and why they settled in those different places. And then when you add reparations onto it, you're asking for something that not only is it not economically possible
Or feasible, yeah.
but it's something that you can't trace because of how slavery and how African dysphoria economically benefited the colonial West, and how they made their money off of the enslavement of Black people. That's how America became a world power, with the production of cotton and goods that were then shipped back into Britain, where they had those manufacturers and created affordable clothing during World War II, and that's how you have these powers creating that system for themselves. So when you say reparations, what reparations do you want is the first thing.
Okay, so going back to what you said about, like, all that is completely correct, but even the British government went to Jamaica, and for the people who are descendants of the Maroons, like, our grandmother was supposed to receive reparations, like, I don't know, a couple $1,000s from the British government, and
But that wasn't because they were black, though. That's because they served in a specific, like, army type of thing.
yeah, but that goes along with reparations, like, slaves were supposed to receive 40 acres. But then the government went and twisted that and didn't give the slaves
The
that.
slaves were also supposed to be freed, but then they weren't freed in the South until like 10 years after, because they didn't tell anybody.
So going back to that, how are those people supposed to receive reparations?
I think you have to look past the word reparations. I think you have to look past an economic gain, a physical gain, and you have to do what you were talking about, Qetsiyah, about the systematic oppression and how we can somehow change that to benefit everyone equally, and look at a wealth disparity and figure out how impoverished communities that are segregated based on that economic and classist ideology, and how we can improve their quality of life. The same way we look at like the white majority and that more wealthy population, and have those equal rights. Like,
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
But Lauren, I'm gonna get to you in a second. But just to go off of what you're saying, we change this. Say we make the system better for everyone. Okay, like in this perfect world, it's all equal distributed wealth, whatever, and oppression is not as much of a factor in terms of like our discussions, right? But then, don't you think that it's still important for us to receive reparations? Because the reparations is really just making amends. So when the Jewish people and the Japanese and all of them receive reparations, the reason why they don't feel as oppressed or the reason why they don't feel as much resentment towards the system is because they had those amends made. And that's one of the reasons why we can't, like for example, if you go to South Africa and you talk about the apartheid.
apartheid.
Yeah, apartheid. If you go there, and I was reading a book, and like you literally go there and you mention to anyone about those times, and you try and provoke a conversation. They're like, yo, those were bad times, but so glad we're past it. If you go over to America or in Canada or in the Caribbean and you mention things of oppression, everybody really has a lot of heated things to say, and there's a lot of resentment towards the system because there's no amends made. So don't you think that it's still, although yes, we need to first fix the system, we need to get a foundation going. Don't you think it's still important that we receive amends and we get amends made between our community?
Before you, like, Israel and the Jewish people, that is a whole other political problem. Because Israel was founded on Palestinian land and then given to the Jews who had been, like, replaced because of the European genocide in World War II. But that wasn't their land, and now they're in a giant war with Palestine, and people are basically in
Qetsiyah first in line.
genocide. But and Japan, they're still facing effects of radiation poisoning.
Yes.
There are places that are you can't live there. Yeah, and that type of poisoning, when you talk about it in Japan, people are still obviously upset about that, and it's not that they received reparations. It's that Japan became its own imperial state. It changed and followed some Western customs, and then created its place in this Western economy, and then benefited off of that and changed into a more metropolitan island.
But going back to like Canada now, and fixing the system, how are we supposed to fix, dismantle the segregation between low-income communities, especially in Toronto, especially the stigmas that go around, especially our black men, and how we are, as black people, as first-generation Caribbeans, we are looked down upon in the GTA and no one talks about it because we live in Canada and we should be grateful.
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like, because like, you know, like to see low income communities and stuff, I think that some people think that giving money is going to benefit others, but if you don't teach people how to go around with their money, how to, you know, you can give someone,
Yeah,
you
like
can give
financial literacy.
yeah, it's exactly like learning people, like maybe educate them on finances. Because not, if I give $50 to this person and $50 to another person, this person might be able to make 100 off of it, and the other one will just spend it on whatever, you know, go
Investment,
shopping.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So even if you give money, maybe they should like
Education.
Yeah.
educate people.
Like financial.
That's why I was saying, like, land is just so much more important. I know that Marcus says, you know, land is money, but at the end of the day, you give someone how much money, you give somebody land. Land is an investment. Land appreciates. Like, land is just so important. I feel like if we got either land, if we got houses, if we got property, that would just benefit the community so much more.
I have a way we can get land, property, whatever we want. And all it involves, okay, so first of all, we were talking about how accountability is hard to identify now because, you know, it's been so much time, so many people have moved here and there. We can't hold anybody accountable to give us direct compensation. It's not going to happen, right? And you were talking about Japan and how they were affected by the bombings of Hiroshima, I think. The other
And
one.
Nagasaki.
Yeah, they were affected by those bombings and they weren't given direct reparations, but they're still able to create their own culture. They're able to, you know, move on from that as people by themselves. I feel like for us, if we want land, we want money, we want jobs, it's simple, just assimilate ourselves into society more often. All we gotta do is succeed. All we have to do is make money.
Exactly. Well, yeah, so wait, hold on. But I think that I'm going to get to you guys in a second. I think I'm going to go Lauren and Audny. I think that what you're saying is a great solution. This is amazing for the Black community, but right now we're discussing in terms of the government making amends with the Black community.
I say it's impossible.
You say it's impossible, but I'm saying, do you think that we deserve that? Do you think that is something that we should fight for?
I believe that even if it was something that because we obviously do deserve it and should
we
fight
fight
for
for it? Yes.
But look, we're talking about this right now. What do reparations look like? None of us is coming with a direct answer of how we could possibly receive reparations from the government. So what's the alternative?
Hold on, wait.
Answers for you.
Before you go, Qetsiyah did have something to say.
Yeah, I forgot.
I knew it. Go ahead.
Japan, when I say they created an imperialistic Western society, I mean Japan started wars. Japan occupied Korea. It created lots of controversy and disparity that is still being acknowledged by the Japanese government. They did they had genocidal tendencies. They created genocidal tendencies. They did comfort women, where they enslaved women and took them away from their families from different places, like Korea, which they occupied for a pretty long time, Taiwan, different places in the Pacific Ocean. Yeah,
I don't know.
all around those East Asian countries. Wait for this, and then they took those women away from their families at really young ages and gave them to soldiers so that they would then not rape people that they were like taking their land away from them, so that they wouldn't be like affected by spies and like the CIA stuff. So it was really diplomatic. It created a lot of problems in East Asian countries. But that westernization of their country also destroyed a lot of cultural significance, and it was only to benefit Japan economically, and that's a whole different story.
What does that have to do with it?
Like that. Like, so if you were to do what you're saying that Japan did to create
No,
this,
I didn't mean anything.
I know, but
I didn't mean anything that they did unscrupulously or deviantly.
I know.
I'm just saying that.
But like to make that money, like to make that society that is homogeneous, that makes a specific amount of money. They did that through war. They did that
I
through
don't imply we do anything.
No,
Hold
I'm
on,
not
let her
saying
finish
you
her
don't do
point. Let her
anything
finish.
through war, but like creating that divide and that sense of like join like society where you join together and you work towards this goal can give you sovereignty as a people, which is something that Canada is regularly against.
Hold
Not with
Hold on, let her finish.
Hold on,
Let her finish.
I'm implying the same thing you're
Hold
implying.
on, just let her finish.
like independent sovereignty of an entire group can cause war. So when, yeah, it can, because, okay, indigenous people filed for sovereignty with the UN, and Canada, Australia, and the US, like 5 countries were against this who have indigenous populations, because having that sovereignty can then challenge the sovereignty of the country that occupies those lands that the treaty was on. So if you as a person who then live in a country and you're not assimilated to that specific like ideology of what Canadianism is, like what it is to be Canadian, then you separate yourself. You separate yourself into a different portion of society. No, but I'm not saying.
Hold on.
I'm saying like to achieve what you're talking about in that form of reparations, in that form of we work together as Black people, as a whole to create this money, like Black Wall Street. You create what outsiders would see as a sovereign nation. And then that becomes something that they fight against, which is why Black Wall Street collapsed. Because in America, in that situation, you're then a threat to that independent sovereignty of that nation. So you have nationalism, you have imperialism, you have different forms of has something that could make an economy. But then you're looking at it and you're realizing that through government's eyes, that's a threat. And
so you're saying,
hold on.
I just want to clarify what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're saying that if we all decide to become successful as one,
yeah.
and create, our own, intersectional forms of business and of commerce, you're saying that that's going to be a threat to the government?
Well, it
and
was.
people will oppose that?
Yeah, it was.
Come on.
So if we all,
Yeah.
let's say we're all here and we're all to make our own, forms of money through going to school, through making businesses and whatnot. Hold on.
Yeah.
And let's say you become a doctor, you become a lawyer, you own your own business, you own your own business. We all put our money together, and we help grow you guys' businesses so you make more money. You guys, and it's the same thing, Through that, we're already assimilating ourselves into the world by saying, you own this business now. We have this Black woman. Look at what's happening in Brampton, for example. There's so many people from, let's say, from South Asia who've come here, and they own so much. I don't have to describe it. You see it everywhere, and that's the type of stuff that I feel like Black people should.
But are you saying that this is not a threat to the government? You're saying that does not threaten them?
Well, how would it be a threat to the government?
Okay.
What is the government gonna do to stop these guys from making money? What are they gonna possibly do to stop them making money?
Oh,
okay, wait, hold on.
We live in a capitalistic world.
Everyone pause. We have 2 minutes, but I really want Qetsiyah to talk about what she was talking about before we started the panel. You were saying about how in the Congo, because Qetsiyah's from the Congo, and she was saying about how you guys do actually have to pay back the Europeans. So please talk a little bit about that.
Basically, like in Congo, like the Congolese have been colonized by the Belgian people. So since the Belgium and like Europe still has a hand in like what goes on in the government, like in Congo and stuff, the Congolese people have to pay back the Belgian people for the fact that they have colonized us.
That's crazy.
You see, and I don't know.
Is
I
it the government or do you guys do the taxes?
No, it's like the government has to pay that back
so it's
because like
taxes.
taxing is kind of weird.
Yeah.
The government pays them,
why?
or they pay the government?
The Congolese government is saying that the Congolese government pays Belgium
Yeah.
Like,
after Belgium
do
colonized.
they do it the same way Germany still pays, like the Western powers, like the Paris Accords, like they still pay for like starting that whole war? And
Yeah, but like
that
we
whole
didn't
thing?
start a war.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they came to our country, did all what they did, like colonized us basically. We know what goes on in colonization, rape, like all this stuff, like stealing and all that stuff. And you still ask those people to pay you back for something that they never asked for, and then you see like reparations. Like how can you ask other people to pay you back for colonization, but you can't pay those people for what you did? You know what I mean? And to me it's like kind of crazy because right now we're talking about reparations and then
Hold on. We're not even done. We're gonna end it right here. I'm sorry, guys. We don't have a certain amount of time. To all my kings and queens, thank you so much for listening for our first episode. Guys, give your hands a round of applause. That was something. That was good. That was intense. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next one.